Welcome to the Texas Panhandle Builders Association TPBA Builder Talk podcast, where we'll bring you expert advice from the heart of Amarillo building community. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting in the trade, our goal is to keep you informed on the ever-evolving building codes, share best practices, and help you excel in your craft. From innovative design ideas to smart material selections and everything in between, we're here to support you in every aspect of home building. Each episode, we'll dive into the topics that matter most to builders, contractors, and industry professionals, ensuring that you stay ahead of the curve in this rapidly changing landscape. Our discussions are shaped by the experiences and knowledges of our hosts and guests, providing you valuable perspectives that you can apply directly to your work. The views and the opinions expressed are those of the host and the guest and may not always reflect the most up-to-date or accurate information. Let's build something great together, one conversation at a time. Welcome back to the TPBA Builder Talk podcast. It's been a minute since we've had a chance to record one. Today we're re-recording one. We tried one for the Home and Garden Show, doing a live podcast, and the audio didn't quite turn out.
Garden show. Garden show.
So here we are recording a new episode over Fenestrations, and we want to thank our.
By the way, that means windows and doors.
Fill
Skylights.
the holes.
Today's sponsors. Of course, we have Huber Engineered Woods. Huber's our year-long sponsor for the podcast. We're really grateful to have them. Believe in their product and their system as a whole. And great R&D, great product.
Mm-hmm.
Can't say enough about Huber.
Yeah.
And today's episode is going to be sponsored by Pella Windows and Doors. Being that's the topic, they jumped in and decided to sponsor this day's episode. And we're really happy to have them and appreciate what Pella does for us in our community here as well. Well,
And who are you?
I'm Jordan Dugan with Caprock Design and Build, your host.
Ben Hardesty with Southwest Sales.
I'm Robert Downing with RDS Inspection Service.
I'm Joel Rafton with Further Duration Homes.
And we're all a part of the Texas Panhandle Builder Association.
Yeah, we are.
Which is probably how you found this podcast. So, but
Welcome.
yeah, windows and doors.
Windows and
like
doors.
Got to get in, got to get out.
Got to see, got to have some light.
Got to have some light.
Got to have a little light.
You have to have egress. You have to have light. There's all kinds of reasons for having windows and doors.
There is. And we've got a lot of codes that regulate those windows and doors, probably which aren't real known about because the windows and door manufacturers are the ones that kind of follow those guidelines.
Yeah, they pretty much stay on top of it. They don't monkey around with it. They'll fix it from one climate zone to the next, but typically there's a sticker on every window. I wish we had an example, but we don't, of what the U value is of the window and just the I can't think of the word I'm looking for. The solar heat gain. That's the word I was
just
looking
ratings.
for. All the ratings on a window.
Yeah.
And based on the climate zone, depends on the rating that has to be on that window.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just a matter of changing a sticker.
Correct.
No, the
So-
manufacturer, like Jordan says, kind of rules the roost on this, and they have testing, and they know the environment, they know the wind, they know the sun, and they tell us and the code what works in their product lines, and the stickers on the window for the report information, and the inspector and the designer, and like we'll talk about pretty soon is why a certain window would be in a certain spot or what's too big, what's too small, and it's just part of our code requirements to build it correctly.
And there are cheap windows out there that you can get from various locations that do not have a sticker, and those do not meet code and should not be installed in a house.
Nope.
They haven't gone through the proper procedures and testings and verifications to meet the standards that we're in today. And one of the reasons they're cheap is because they're not paying for that.
All that testing.
Yeah,
And
if you're buying a 3050 window for $100, keep looking.
I hope it's for your kids' playhouse.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it's for. There's a reason to have that. And you're building a kid's playhouse or a tree house. Not so much around here for tree houses.
No.
But that's about what they're good for.
So the sticker is important. And it's that sticker is being produced by the same testing facility throughout the United States.
Yes.
There's 4 main categories on that sticker that we're looking for. And it has a lot of other information about the window as well. But those 4 categories are really what's kind of letting us know that, hey, this is an approved window for your region. This meets all the specs that it should have, and you're good to install it. And you typically would leave that on there for the inspector to see and verify as well.
Well, even going back to the beginning, the plan review guy has to know it.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's
Supposed to.
Well, yeah, I mean, in the sake of some jurisdictions and some plan review, it's a detailed list of windows and why, and it's a little more detailed in some jurisdictions than other. But way up front in plan review, at the very beginning, you have to, just as you're putting a list in for electric loads or something, you got to really give them a whole very organized list on this window per location and the sticker values, and that comes out. And so much glass. I mean, there's a whole thing on there, and it comes out in yay or nay. So plan review is a big thing to do with it in most jurisdictions.
Yeah, and some people think that's a pain, and I understand it, but
is that a joke?
No. What I'm getting at is some people go, well, I don't know what that is until I order my windows, and the windows get here. Wrong. The manufacturer already has it. So it's no big deal.
It's in your quote.
Yeah, in your quote from
Pella
or
Pella does a good job.
They do,
and they will tell you what that window is.
Well, so another aspect of that, we talked a while back in one of our first episodes about going performance versus prescriptive.
Yep.
Right. So if we're doing a performance, you absolutely need to know these up front because that's how they're going to score your house.
Yeah.
They're going to design it to meet the standards that you would need to meet.
Even when you're doing the computer modeling for the high performance,
you got to have it for that.
The net zeros and those types of things.
Absolutely,
that's information that goes into the basically the recipe. You build a big recipe to build your house, and that's a big part of it.
Yep. Turning the dials.
Yeah, you can build the recipe based off of the prescriptive table and use that. And then if you do what you're supposed to do, and that's to have an inspector come out and look at your windows and doors and stuff, typically at rough in stage or at insulation stage, and he will jot down or write down what all of those numbers are and compare it to
verification process.
Process. That's right. And we don't do that here, but we should be.
Well, we actually do that as far as having an energy audit.
Sort of.
I mean, I think that when I did that in that Zero House, that gentleman, he came out and read the stickers and had to enter it back into his program. Or I wasn't going to get my certificate at the end.
Right.
But that's a specialty.
That's right.
Third party kind of thing.
Right.
It isn't the standard building inspector guide.
No.
Correct.
No.
Correct.
So,
you
don't have your gear today.
I don't have.
Who are you?
I know.
No hat, no shirt.
Well,
you need to excuse yourself and come back with a hat. This isn't a visual audio podcast we're doing.
It is.
I'm shocked.
And we've got answer machine playing in the background.
Well, that means we're for real. I mean, that's not dubbed in, but I'm just shocked not to see you in your stuff. Must be laundry day at your house.
It's laundry. It is laundry day at the house.
There you go.
Okay,
that's exactly right. Well, I want to get into the 4 categories that we're going to talk about, and then I'm going to pivot into why, if we went into a performance path, why we actually might not meet the standard on some of those. What some options we could do to kind of turn those dials a little bit. But let's talk about the 4, right? So
I got them right here.
First one, let's talk about the U factor.
U factor for climate zone 4.
Well, first put a description of what U factor means for the group. We need to quote numbers. We don't know what the heck it is.
Okay. U factor basically is the inverse of R value. So, but
R value is the insulation.
It's the insulation
efficacy. It's an insulation. The way it was explained to me, because I asked why U value was used on Windows instead of an R value. And it was kind of funny the way the glass people put it to me was, well, it's because the builders in the 50s and 60s couldn't wrap their head around the R value number of a window.
Mm.
And I went, oh, okay. So it just stuck.
That makes perfect sense.
That they would understand the U value being a higher number. They got it. They could.
Does anybody know what that letter U stands for?
It's UA, so it's
you don't have to know. I was just curious.
I don't know.
I don't know.
No, it is.
What's the R letter stand for? Resistance?
Resistance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Resistance.
So unresistance.
So you'd want the more efficient window is going to have a higher or a lower U factor?
It's going to have a lower factor number.
Yeah.
Smaller numbers better.
So what he means by the inverse of R is, if I'm not mistaken, if you have a 0.3 U factor, to get the R, you would put 0.3 over 1.
Yeah.
And that number would give you the R factor.
value. Yep.
So R value of a 0.3 window, 0.3 divided by 1, right?
An assembly with a U factor equal to or less than that specified in the table shall be permitted as an alternative to the R value in table R 4.02.
It's 1 over the U factor.
Yes.
So 0.3 is a 3.33 R value.
Right.
I think a good window, if you're getting anywhere near the 6s, is a really good window.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're going to be down 0.12 U factor, 0.12. We don't see a lot of windows like that around here unless they're European based.
They're in the 0.27s, 2.5s,
Yeah.
2.8s around here for a decent window.
I was told by 2 different window manufacturers that you need to be very careful if you're choosing an American made window over a European window, is because they measure those
Frame
windows different.
Yeah, they include the frame, I believe.
Yep.
And we do not.
The Europeans just include the glass. That's all they include.
Is it center of glass?
Center of glass. Yep.
And we're the whole glass.
We're the whole glass and the frame. So even if you were to see a 0.10 for a European window, for instance,
doesn't mean it's better.
It doesn't necessarily mean it better. It could be the same as a U value of a window of a 0.15, 0.19, somewhere up in there. So I don't know what the comparisons are, but all the U.S. manufacturers of windows have all done that research. They know what the difference is.
So let's break that down just a little more. Sometimes I try to think like someone who doesn't know anything.
Yeah, I get it.
And so the letter U, or the U factor, is a rating on how good the window is. Is that good in the way of air infiltration? Is it good in the way
That's another number. Okay,
so what's the good part of the U? What's that mean exactly? It's not air, and it's not solar heat gain.
It's the resistance to heat transfer.
Okay,
so it's literally just
the whole entire unit is tested for the R value resistance, but in the letter U.
That's exactly right.
Test it?
Well, the heat lamp and
the thermometer underneath on the other side of it.
Just that simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a real hard.
Okay. All right.
So that's it. U factor is the R value basically of the window. We're looking at how good that window will insulate that opening
for heat and cool.
Yep.
All right. What was the next number?
The next number is for skylights, and it's done the same.
No, what was the next category you wanted? Or I guess we can talk about the U value for the skylights.
Yeah, skylight is a 0.55.
Yep.
And a U value for, let's see what the other one is. Let me go back up here to the table. The doors are glazed fenestration. Solar heat gain is actually the next one. So
there's no U factor for the door.
Don't see a door.
Okay.
No.
Would make sense that it would.
0.4 is typically what we see for
on doors.
Maybe they're testing the actual door panel with glass in it, not the locking.
Well,
and
it
the
depends on
gasketing.
whether it's a half glass.
Well, sure.
Or all
but
glass.
You don't think like in a window unit, it's a complete window unit, and I can see them doing that testing. But on a door, it might just be the door blank itself, because there's no way they can guarantee any kind of interlock or gasket systems on a jam, door to jam. They couldn't. There's way too many variances there.
Sure.
So it must just be the glass that's in the door, and if it's a fiberglass door or a clad door, or whatever.
That's what I was fixing to say. Whether
Yeah.
it's a solid wood or
Mhm.
fiberglass or whatever you
Yeah,
want. Metal
so-
is another one. I mean,
yeah, that makes sense. They just,
yeah.
the door blank, the door
And
slab.
there's actually a sticker on the door when they come in. Most of them, I mean, most of these numbers are already on the doors and windows. And so as an inspector, I go by and just make sure that because this is the minimum. That's what we're building to, is to the minimum. So,
And getting to your point about you coming to inspect, a lot of times the stickers disappear.
they do.
So if you as a homeowner or builder, when that stuff shows up on site, take some photo documentation.
Yeah.
And if the sticker's gone, then this is what was on this window. Here's a picture of it.
Or take a piece of tape and stick it back to the window.
Yeah, it's very hard to pull an invoice up and prove that was the window.
Yeah.
There's not a serial number that's identified on the glass.
No.
It's
but I've taken pictures and it's obvious through that glass is that dumpster. And then there's the school there.
Yeah.
I didn't turn the house.
sure.
That's the window that's there. And so I've done that before.
And we have a tendency to use the same window from one side of the house to the next.
Yeah.
We do not vary. We should be.
We'll get there.
We're getting there. Am I getting ahead of you?
You're getting ahead of me.
Okay, sorry.
Let's go through.
Do you inspect those stickers at the end or at the rough end?
Rough end.
I see.
So you factor the next one. Let's talk about solar heat gain coefficient, which is also on the sticker.
Yes.
As SHGC.
Yes.
Okay. So what's the solar heat gain coefficient do? Right. We're talking about how much.
That's easier to understand than U value.
Yeah,
It is. And it's in a way it's kind of similar. The U value, we're talking about outside air temperature, right? The outside temperature coming through the glass. The solar heat gain coefficient, we're still kind of talking about temperature,
It's solar,
but it's solar temperature, it's solar heat.
it's not
Right.
snow.
So they're in the same, but they're not. And the higher the solar heat gain coefficient,
It's hugely important what side of the house you're looking at too, for sure.
that number, I don't know exactly how they get the number, but so 0.4 is our minimum standard right now. 0.35 would be a better solar heat gain coefficient. The lower the number is, the better that solar heat gain coefficient is. The higher that number is, the more solar heat
And
gain.
in our typical windows, the way I've had it explained is the higher that solar heat gain window can go in our climate. Now it makes the window a lot more clearer to look out of, but it doesn't help stop that solar heat gain from coming in. So, I've always said if climate zone 3 and climate zone 5 could have a baby, it would be climate zone 4 because it's one of the hardest climates in the world to build to. And so, because we're dealing with
high swings of each.
So it's very difficult.
So you just mentioned a second ago, the number for the solar was, you said we're at this.
We're at 0.4.
Okay, well, break that down for a second, not the 0.4. When you say we are at, who's we and what's national and what code are we talking about? Because we're talking to the whole world here. We have big, we got big people watching this here.
We're referring to our Amarillo, and we're enforcing 2015 IRC, and that was the code for our energy zone.
IECC.
Yes, that's correct.
So 2015.
Yes.
And so just down the road, it's a different climate change by a bit, but they're on a different code cycle.
Correct.
So they're doing a better window.
Most likely they
Most
are.
likely.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So I'm just saying, if you're listening to us out of a different state, it's kind of specific to what your jurisdiction is adopted
Absolutely.
for the code.
Yes.
Good point.
So our code is 2015 right now.
Yeah.
It is.
Where the city of Austin, for instance, while I was out in Austin in April, I was
2024.
sitting there. They're on the 2024 and they're enforcing it.
Yeah. So that's just something you want to pay attention to, is where you're living and what your code is,
Yep.
and what you've adopted.
So we've got U factor, solar heat gain coefficient. The next one I want to do is the VT, the visible transmission, because it ties in
with the solar
heat gain.
Yeah.
And usually the better that window is at solar heat gain coefficient, so the lower that number would be,
the higher.
Right. The less clear.
The worse it is to see through.
It is.
Right.
You're getting less visible transmission. So there's also another factor into that. And some of the real high quality glass can have a pretty good solar heat gain coefficient and still have a really high visible transmission.
Especially a
triple pane. But you are paying for that quality of glass to get that clearness so that when you look out, things aren't distorted or green or different color than they should be. It looks like it would if you were outside with your
It's
own
important
house.
on a view house.
Very important on a view house.
Not so much on 3050 egress with curtains.
Right.
Not a big deal.
10 foot away from a neighbor.
Yeah, 5 foot. Yeah, right. 5 foot setback. So keep that in mind. It's not that big a deal if you have nothing to see.
And some people like the solar heat gain coefficient look because you don't see in the house very easily.
Right.
So you're driving down the street and you've got a big, 6 foot window. You can't really see what they're doing, even though the curtains are open, because that solar heat gain coefficient tint is blocking that view.
Mm-hmm.
And it blocks it more from the outside than it does the inside, of course.
But unfortunately, if it's on the north side of the house, that's not necessarily a good thing either.
Yes. Almost there. The last section that we have that is commonly not placed on our stickers here, which is supposed to be by the window manufacturer, is air leakage.
Yep.
There is a requirement for air leakage, for minimum air leakage, which is a good thing. And our air leakage here is 0.3 CFM.
Yes.
So 0.3 cubic feet a minute is what that window unit itself can leak. Now we're not saying that if the window is installed improperly and not sealed up, that you're not going to get way more leakage than that. We're saying that the window unit itself,
how it's glazed to the sash.
That's right.
Yep.
That's exactly right. And so that is an important one. We don't want leaky windows. That results here is
dust.
a dirty house.
Yeah,
Right,
dirty
yeah.
house.
Yeah, we get windstorms. What's those things called? Saboos? Haboobs.
Boobs.
Yeah, it's a big windstorm like you see on TV where they take over the horse and the guy riding.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big dust storm. Yeah, we have those. And I've seen them come right through the windows.
Yeah.
Right through the windows. And they were just sitting on the sill, nice layer of dust. At 80-mile-an-hour winds with the dust, there's not a lot of erosion control, a lot of grass and green. So you guess dirt just hits the air and it comes right in the window. And that's air leakage.
And
you see it. It's definitely not I wonder if
you
it's
can
there.
hear it even.
Yeah, it's there.
0.4 is where we're at. I would say a lot of our windows around here, and it makes a difference if the window's operable or not operable, but
True.
A lot of them are probably around the 0.3. So depending on the
I've seen
manufacturer.
a lot of single hungs here lately because I've been paying attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
We're at 0.3, but I know without a doubt in my mind, after setting through a couple of different window manufacturers, as well as I do that window that is a casement window seals a lot better because the wind's blowing that window to itself to seal.
We have a casement window behind us. Actually, it's a Pella casement window that we were looking at earlier, and it's a 0.3.
Yeah,
and it's a fairly large window. Now, if that was a fixed window, we probably would be somewhere around a 0.25,
probably,
which is a pretty tight window.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is considered their maximum allowance. That's not just what that window blew. That's a series of tests over, and the highest one that was it.
And that one's still going to leak in certain environments.
It
absolutely will. So don't think that you get this number and this all magic sealed thing. That's not a reality.
The only thing I think where that's not true is if you're buying a window in the coastal plains. Mm-hmm. If you're buying windows down there that are hurricane resistant,
stuff, that's a different world.
Different window.
But for us,
we're not going to buy those for up here. No. Typically,
something else that plays into this a lot is the shipping, handling, and installation of this window.
Yep.
So say it was a 0.3, and you had some guys out there that were just trying to manhandle a window and not handling it properly or carefully, kind of slamming around or picking it up by a corner and letting it have a lot of pressure.
Compromised
on a vinyl window. Yeah, that leakage may not be anywhere close to that point.
or even shipping.
Yeah, shipping.
Yeah, even shipping.
And depending on the quality of the vinyl and how they do the corners, they would be internally cracked and you would not know.
Mm-hmm.
Hence a back dam.
And you can tell a lot about a window just by the way it's packaged.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not packaged very well, probably not a window you want to put in. And the higher quality windows, the windows you pay a little bit more money for, if you pay attention, they are packaged very well because they know that's a big game changer for that window. So now we've gotten all 4 of those categories covered by the sticker, even though we don't see one of them here locally. We're supposed to be, but manufacturers aren't putting that on there, and that's the air leakage.
The city's not demanding it.
No, so he's not demanding. It's information you can find out. It's just
Yeah.
not posted on that sticker. Now let's roll into what we were talking about, how we've got different types of windows on maybe the south side of the house versus the north side of the house.
Right.
This rolls into the performance, or not necessarily using a prescriptive path, because you may want a window that has really poor solar heat gain coefficient on one side of the house,
Right.
and really good solar heat gain coefficient on the other side of the house, depending on the season that you're in, the angle of the sun, and what benefits you can get off of that.
And then you're all in overhang is going to,
Absolutely.
that's going to do another part. I'm beginning to see a lot more on overhangs being installed more on, of course, the west side of the house.
Mm-hmm.
So where you won't see overhangs all the way around the window, but I am seeing them on the west side of the house to give them a little bit more shading to let that sun come down a little bit further
Before it hits the window.
before it hits the window.
And
it's
a 2-part win, because in the summertime, you're blocking that overhead sun. That's a more vertical sun here.
true.
In the wintertime, that's a more lateral, it's a lower sun angle.
Right.
And it does allow some of that sun to come in the house when you need it in the wintertime. And so that lower solar heat gain coefficient in a house that's built with large overhangs can be helpful. Same thing with a house where you've got one side that's got a high solar heat gain. Maybe it's that west side, but your east side doesn't, because it doesn't
Right.
really need it.
Doesn't really need it.
We've been looking at my son-in-law is really involved in this programming, but we do a sun index
Mhm.
of the job site and the house throughout the year. And it's a graphic, and you can actually see where the sun is hitting and why.
Mm-hmm.
And depending, like that Delhart thing, we actually moved that house, 25 feet more away from that shop, because that shop was shading that greenhouse.
Sure.
And that was something that Ryan had done. And it was a great graph with considering the season, the daylight savings, the whole bit.
Mm-hmm.
And within the grow cycle of that room, we moved that house 25 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that he brought up. And I had brought up, because I've had to do sun index testing, not necessarily for what we're talking about here,
Mhm.
but in certain jurisdictions, you can't shade the next
Like
guy's
neighbor's
yard.
house.
Yard.
Yeah,
Right.
and so if you're in a certain area of where people are sunning themselves, let's say by the lake,
Mm-hmm.
and this other big house gets built, and that sun is blocking their sunshine, that's a no.
Yeah.
So I've had to do sun indexes for that reason, but I didn't really consider them for this other reason.
Mm-hmm.
So doing that, it's a very simple. Some of you can probably Google a program. It's not brain surgery, right?
Mm-hmm.
But doing a sun index report on what you're doing and how it's coming is very, very helpful in designing house and location. It's
Absolutely.
hugely important.
And you can plug that into the 3D modeling and
Right.
actually see the shadowing.
Yeah, that's what he
being
does.
Cast.
yeah,
Yeah.
he has it on, and you can actually, he turns into a YouTube
Yeah.
little video, and it goes, and the calendar clicks on the bottom, and
Yep.
pretty neat.
It
And
is
so
neat.
that's something to consider.
Yeah, we don't
Importance.
do a lot of that up here.
No, I'm talking from builder's point of view.
Yeah, from builder's point of
Yeah,
view.
and if you've got 5 foot setbacks and the house is there, well, that's a whole consideration.
Mhm.
Or it's not there, it's going to be there.
Mhm.
I mean, that's the whole subdivision. That whole line is set for 5 foot setbacks. It's going to fill up someday. So those are just little side note considerations in the world of design.
Yeah.
So speaking of design, we've kind of went over the parameters and the requirements of Windows, but let's talk about the style and operations of Windows. Let's go over that. Who wants to dive into it?
I had a discussion just early in the week on that. We're closing in the sunroom. There's a lot of houses here that have these little outdoor porches areas, and then people want them closed in. And this homeowner wanted large floor to ceiling windows and thought it was a great idea to do a casement window, which kind of opens off either side.
Mhm.
And I said, I'm not a fan of casement windows where there's a walkway because you're going to run your face into it because you're looking down at your phone or you're bringing the barbecue in and you're going to end up in the hospital with a big cut in your face. And so a casement is a great window, but if you're in a traffic pattern, you're walking, not a big fan. So I suggested to her, since I wanted the heat to get out anyway, I suggested to her high awnings, and she wanted the view, so I wasn't going to go single hung. So there's casements, there's high awnings, there's low single hung, there's all kinds of cool options. But interesting enough, in this particular case, I vetoed the casement, and she understood the logic.
The code requires 24 inches on the hinge, 24 inches on the latch side, or a vertical, or I should say horizontal, coming from a wall to a door swing, that those windows be tempered. That's already in the code. It's been in the code a long time.
And there's several more things that.
There's more that's considered.
There's a whole bunch of stuff about tempered glass. That's a whole subject in
near
itself.
Tubs and showers and
stairwells and too many steps.
But I was in reference to what he was talking about on the patio, and I get that. And most of the guys here seem to do a pretty good job of I have seen a tempered window get, if you've got 4 windows and they're a solid pane window all the way across, and you've got 4 windows. I've come across where the framer or whoever put the tempered window down at the end instead of down here by the the door, and I've had to say, nope, got to switch them.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
So it happens. It doesn't happen a lot, but
for those that don't know about tempered, it's like a car windshield.
Right.
When it breaks, it breaks into a lot of pieces. It's laminated together.
Yeah.
You're not having big pieces of glass fall on you that can cause a lot of damage. I think most people are familiar with tempered, but
they didn't know exactly what that is
and why. I imagine you're in the shower and you slip and you fall into the shower door and it's actual glass and it cuts your arm off.
That's bad news.
That's bad news. So if it's tempered, you fall, or even if you've seen videos and maybe you've even had a case with someone accidentally ran right through a sliding glass door. I mean, I've seen it personally happen.
Yeah.
Kids are all on fire running as fast as they can, or someone slips and they go right through the door. They're shocked. They're not cut.
Right.
And the door's sitting in a pile on the ground. You're kind of going, oh, okay. But if that wasn't a tempered glass, they would be not alive. So you've all seen that. That's kind of difference.
The one thing that I have to straighten out occasionally with homeowners is the difference between a frosted or rained pattern glass. Oh, that's tempered glass. No. Not necessarily.
That's obscured glass.
It's obscured glass. Obscured and tempered is not the same thing. So you have to make sure wherever you're putting
that's decorative glass.
Yep.
So we have casement windows.
Yep.
Let me make another comment about casements. There was something I didn't really understand till I moved to Amarillo, Texas. Really good point of view. Doing a takeoff with a window manufacturer. Maybe it was Pella. Probably was. And so in casements, it's the same thing you guys just talked about a minute ago. Maybe a casement would seal better because the wind pulls it close. Right. Pretty good point. But on the opposite end of that point, if you are choosing placements of casements and the wind always comes from the southwest, then you're not going to make that casement open where the wind's going to break the casement.
Correct.
You're going to order a left or a right and locate them based on wind patterns. I didn't ever thought of that because I wasn't living in a windy environment.
Yep. Put the casement hinge to the prevailing wind.
Yeah. So that's there's a note, a good note,
Casement hinge to the prevailing wind.
Yep. So they swing open. I don't know if you guys have caught on that. We didn't actually describe
it's like a door.
These windows.
Yeah, it's like a door.
Very similar to a door. Some of them will have a safety latch in case they are into a prevailing wind, that the window will only open a little bit when you crank it open, and then you've got to release that safety latch to open it the rest of the way.
And there's a whole thing with that. It has to be an easy thing because it's part of the egress.
That's right. Kids got to be able to do it.
It's a kid-friendly latch. And there's something else regarding if it's over 6 feet from the ground. There's a little code that we won't really get into, but you have to be able to get the egress on the window.
And then we have overhung windows, single and double, that are going to operate similarly.
Yeah.
That's the classic window I think everybody knows, right? The bottom sash lifts
I've got
up.
double hung I'll never own them again.
Well, they don't even hardly make double hung anymore. That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's a thing of the
Well,
past.
these windows are 30 years old. So
Right. You can still buy them, but it's like,
Mhm.
why?
The double hung is basically a single hung, but the upper window is operable for cleaning purposes.
correct.
But then also for ventilation purposes, because you can
Yes.
have that top
You're true.
pane down.
Very true. And ventilation, as far as the window goes, the ventilation always works better at the top of the window as opposed to the bottom of the window. So you can get awning windows that awning up or awning down. And if you're using it for ventilation, awning down is always going to ventilate that house better.
The only downside of that is the rain.
It's true. In Europe, they awning in toward the house for
Yes.
that reason. Here, yeah, you're not going to
awning
open it
out.
in the rain, or you need a overhang over that window.
Sure.
And then they have tilt turn windows, which
Yep.
Those are cool.
is kind of a combination of a casement and awning. So you turn the latch one way and the door swings in, or the window swings out. You turn the handle the other way and the door tilts out, or the window tilts out, excuse me. Kind of a multifunction window, but it's going to seal very much like a casement.
They're good for cleaning.
Good for cleaning. They're great. They're a great window. They're a really cool window.
Yeah, that's a cool way.
So I think the only downside on casement and awning is screen placement. You're going to lose that whole.
The screen goes on the inside of the window.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of customers that will take the screens off after we put them up because they don't want to see.
They don't want it.
I can't tell you last time I had a customer that told me to put the screens on. They're in the box in the garage. No one wants screens. Maybe here possibly, but
Yeah,
in the view house, screens aren't a thing.
True.
honestly, people around here don't open windows very often.
I wouldn't think so.
If
No.
we did, you're either going to be dealing with wind, and when you're not dealing with wind, you're
Dealing with bugs.
bugs,
and yeah,
and that's what the screens are for.
yeah.
These bugs.
But they definitely get dirty and they block the view. So, in fact, that last we just finished, I'm like, he goes, "What's that box over in the corner of the garage?" I go, "Those are your screens." He goes, "Oh, huh." I go, well, "They're yours."
Mhm.
I never put them on unless you want me to. He goes, "No,
Yeah.
I don't want them."
Yeah.
There's nothing in the code book that requires it.
Yeah.
Usually when we're designing a house, because of our climate and our conditions and just everything that comes into play on that, we usually recommend that we do a fixed window everywhere we can, except
Yep.
for an egress window where
For
we have
sure.
to have it, because they don't get open very often. And a fixed window, which is another type of window, doesn't operate at all. It's going to perform better. It's going to last longer. You're
It's
going
less
to have,
expensive.
it's less expensive.
Doesn't have operation. It's,
Long term, you're going to have less issues with it. There's nothing to really repair on it. There's no maintenance on it. And then the other type of windows we've got, like sliding windows,
Yeah. Sliders.
sliders. It's just like a
horizontal slider.
horizontal.
It's like a
slider.
sliding glass door, but small.
It is a overhung window turned on the side almost.
Yeah.
What is it?
Those are ugly.
Yeah, they're pretty ugly. They
There's-
didn't never work real well. And
There's specialty windows like the folding windows.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can get like a panoramic window that folds in sections, and you've got a big opening.
yeah, we
So there's
looked at
different construction materials too. I mean, we see
There
vinyl
is.
a lot more out here, but I used to sell aluminum windows and,
Mhm.
and real high end
and
windows.
there are some pretty expensive aluminum windows that people
They're
don't really know
Schuco,
they
They're
exist.
nice. Thermally
Yeah.
broke aluminum window.
Yep.
Schuco makes a really nice aluminum window.
Yep.
We've got vinyl, aluminum, wood,
Fiberglass.
wood clad, fiberglass, composite.
Mm-hmm.
They all have their ups and downs, and they all have their price ranges, and
Yeah.
it's hard to classify one better than the other. It just depends on the situation.
A lot of it has to do with price point and budget.
It's very true.
So you might want the trickiest best window, but your budget and your price point isn't anywhere close to that. And so, they fit into these little chunks of price points.
Mhm.
You don't be looking at that one. Sorry, your budget doesn't allow it. This is where we're at. It's a good window, but it's not this.
Absolutely.
And
it wouldn't matter if you got a good window or not. If the thing's not installed correctly, it doesn't matter what you put in.
Yeah, that's the best way to ruin a window real quick. Is
Yep.
not to install it.
And I've seen a share of them.
yeah, that's always been a thing.
The only other things that before we get into the installation I want to talk about is we briefly mentioned triple pane. So
Oh yeah.
almost every window is going to at least be a double pane.
Mhm.
it's just two pieces of glass, and it's a glazed unit. That's actually, that piece of glass is it comes that way sealed in it's
Right.
it's a cube, not a cube, but I don't know how else to explain it. It
It's
is
a piece of glass. It's a dividing bar, and then there's another piece of glass
that's sealed together.
and that's your unit.
Yep.
And the thickness between is a variable.
It is.
You know, you order them. It probably has to do with all the rating stickers again.
Absolutely.
But 3/4 to 1 inch to, probably about 1 inch is about the wide as I've seen them.
Are they still filled with argon?
It can be argon. It can. I can't even think of one of the other. There's one different than argon.
Argon's the popular.
Yeah,
for sure.
And we know it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah. We use argon around here. A lot of window manufacturers that ship nationwide use it because of the elevation changes. Won't crack the glass in shipment.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think about
we
that.
We use it for an extra added R value.
Right.
But I think why it caught on is for shipment purposes.
Yeah.
And then we've got triple pane glass, and that's 3 sheets of glass. We've got STC glass, which is similar to a triple pane, but the third sheet is usually not a glass. It's two different size pieces of glass, and a lot of times like a plastic laminate. And the way that works is when frequency hits a certain thickness, part of that, some frequencies won't go through a certain thickness. And so when you change and add another variable of thickness through it, that frequency doesn't continue. It'll stop 3 different ranges of frequencies with 3 different thicknesses, which makes it a sounds transmission control. I can't remember. I might have butchered that, but STC is 2 block sound out. So if you're, say you're living on a busy highway and you put STC windows in,
right,
your house is going to be a lot quieter than it would otherwise. That's kind of the really skimmed over version of how that works, but it does work very well. Now we can get into the installation. And
what about the low E?
Low E has to do with
it's a glass film.
It is a glass film. It is what controls, in our case, our solar heat gain coefficient.
Right.
Think of it as almost a window tint that you can see through.
Mm-hmm.
It's on the inside of the glass.
It's actually silver is what it is. Mm-hmm. Little strips of silver that are put into a film that go onto the glass, or the glass is liquid dipped into it, however it is, but it's on.
It's on.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
It's on. It doesn't really come off. You don't have access to scratch it because it's usually on the inside of the glazed unit itself. But I think the primary unit for that, or the primary material for how it works, is microscopic silver.
Mm-hmm.
I've never looked at it that close.
No,
we typically, I mean, even when I see some of the higher end manufacturers, Pella being one of them, if you don't dive into their full description of that window, you're not absolutely 100% sure.
Mm-hmm.
Double pane with low E, argon, they'll spell it out for you.
Absolutely.
They spell it out for you.
You're paying for it.
Yeah, you're paying for it.
It's extra. I mean, it's something we were mentioning before we started the podcast on low E, is you see it from the outside. You definitely see this tint. It's
right.
a tint.
Mm-hmm.
And different manufacturers, let's say you have a door with a big glass door or panoramic door, they might not get their glass from the same company that someone else gets their glass, or they manufacture their own glass, and that low E tint color might not be the same. Right. You stand back and look at your finished window wall, gigantic view window wall, and this gorgeous door has a different hue than the windows. So just be aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a factor. Not to pun on the factor thing.
No, that's a good point.
Factor.
Nobody wants to spend $60,000 on a curtain wall windows and then have a door that's a different color.
That would upset me.
Yeah, right.
And usually, as long as you stick with the same manufacturer and spell that out, you can get that resolved. But
I mean, and now we got these beautiful panoramic doors, that aren't necessarily going to be provided by the same window manufacturer.
Yeah.
There's some very super trick panoramic doors that don't make windows,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not going to cater to your glass needs.
Mm-hmm.
So just something, if you're into low E, be aware.
Yeah. So installation, there's really two main types of installation, right? So we got a flanged window and a flangeless window. They're going to be installed differently. But outside of that, a lot of the flashings, the waterproofing, the fastening techniques are going to be very, very similar.
They're very similar.
So I'm going to start with how we typically would install at Caprock Design Build our windows on a flanged window. And we are, as you guys know, when we talked about framing, we're commonly using the zip system. And, again, Huber's our sponsor as well. That's a part of their product that they've got. And so we would flash the rough opening of that with either one of Zip Systems tapes, a stretch tape, whatever it is. But that rough opening has a flashing that is waterproofing the edges of that window right before the window goes on.
Right.
Then in new construction, typically we're putting in a nail thinned window. And so that window would be inserted into that opening, and you used to see a lot of nails going in. It's a nail thin window. We typically use a panhead screw just so we're not smacking glass, and you get a little bit wider holding area with the panhead.
You don't like waffle marks on your frame?
Yeah, I try to stay away from that. And then after that window is installed from the outside, we'll tape 3 sides of it, right? So top and then 2 sides, and we're lapping that tape.
In which order are you doing that?
2 sides.
So 2 sides and then the top.
Okay, there you go.
So that way that you're flashing that tape in a manner that you're not creating a path for water to get behind.
It's typical shingle
style
method.
style. That's what it is.
And you're, of course, you're going to center the window up and level the window and all the things that go into that as well. But talking on the waterproof side, usually you would see a window manufacturer go back in and use like a can of spray foam to fill the gaps on the framing. Mm-hmm. We've kind of gone away from the spray foam, and we use a foam backer rod and insert and fill that window. And then we'll use a product called Lexel, which is just a good silicone product, and silicone that window in from the inside to prevent. It's kind of the third layer of defense. If the water gets behind the cladding and then gets behind the flashing on the tape of the window, it's still being protected by the rough opening flashing from penetrating the wood. And then we silicone.
And it's helping your air sealing.
Yeah, I was going to say the air sealing side's high.
Yeah, and with backer rod is a good way to go.
Backer rod, and then the silicone with silicone to the window to the rough opening flashing. So there's no way that if water got behind all of those components, it's still being stopped by that silicone inside that flashing tape, so it would never be touching wood.
So I don't know if people understand what the word backer rod means.
Backer rod is literally.
It sounds metal, doesn't it?
It kind of does.
But it's not.
But it's not.
It's a foam tube that comes in a spool.
Yeah.
About 500 feet long, and don't drop it.
Different sizes, quarter inch, 3/8, half inch, whatever you need.
So you're tucking that between the framing and the window.
Mm-hmm.
And it does the air sealing, plus it takes up space, so you don't use 10 tubes of caulking to caulk it in.
And it doesn't have a rated insulated number on it, but it is.
But it's good.
But it is a foam, and it's going to be helping.
Yeah.
Well, and if you read on a lot of those, it is a combination of an open cell and closed cell material. So, I mean, or you can buy all closed cell if you want to pay the price.
I think they make. I don't know if it's polypropylene, like a rubber-based backer rod.
Yeah,
as well.
They do.
But the reason we like it is because sometimes that window is not dead center to the rough opening, or the rough opening has a little bit of a tilt to it. Mm-hmm. And so maybe you've got an 1/8 inch gap between the framing and the window on one side and a 1/2 inch on the other, whatever it is.
Right.
Sometimes
that's typical, though.
It is. And sometimes that spray foam nozzle, it's really, really hard to get very much spray foam in that little, 16th inch or 8th inch.
And really
gap.
Depending there again on installation, the guy that's doing the spray foam is on the phone or listening to music. the little nozzle. And as long as he gets a squirt, he's out of there to the next window.
Yeah, he's just trying to make it look like it's got it on there.
Yeah, and you can peel that little piece off, and there's nothing back there.
There's nothing back there.
Right. So the backer rod is tucked in.
Yep.
Tight, pushed in tight, and aside from any values or any kind of, it's one of those kind of interesting common sense things that anybody looking at it who knows nothing about anything would go, oh yeah, it makes sense.
Yep.
So it's a better way to go.
Yeah. And that's really our typical window installation, unless we're doing a remodel. And then a lot of times we're
stuck.
Fins. We're trying to, no fins, and we're trying to do like an inset modification that we can seal
and don't move the brick, whatever, blah, blah, blah. It's not the same. Remodel, we don't want to talk about it.
They're basically glued into a hole.
Yeah. That's what you just say. They got 2 screws on the sides and maybe one at the top.
Yeah.
And
it's glued into a hole.
They're glued into a hole. And
that's a really brutal way to say the truth.
It is.
So let's not talk about it.
Yeah. There's, I mean,
but you have to do it.
There's extensive ways that you could go around.
There's no other way about it. You have to do it.
You could remove brick cladding. Or
you're not going to do that though. Gosh, for instance, on that same note, we're here in the Panhandle. Last week we had a big hailstorm, and it just missed our town. It's about 6 miles away, so it hit that town pretty hard. I was talking to someone that lives out there, and it was pretty good hail this time, and it took out all of his window frames. And it's a brick house. So all of that is a fairly new house. So all that good flashing that we just talked about, all that tape, all that stuff, it's gone now.
Yeah.
It's now glued in a hole.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thing with
the frames that work really well with hail around here are those fiberglass frames.
I bet they would.
They have seen some. I've been told by some of our manufacturers that they've taken in like grapefruit size hail. And of course, the glass is gone, but the frame is.
I can see that. I can see that. The vinyl, we know that.
Yeah,
you can actually hit that with a hammer, and he broke it. And you're like, I don't know around here, but we had a guy that was the same guy that would fix the chip in your bathtub. He was a vinyl repair guy, and he'd go around and he did a really great job inlaying pieces of vinyl when the framer accidentally whacked it with the waffle hammer before screws. So they were very vulnerable. The fiberglass is a better hail protection product, and obviously aluminum, and go from there. But this storm just trashed this guy's almost brand new house.
Yep. What else do we have on windows?
One little thing we haven't talked about and we don't see very often is back damming.
Back damming.
Yep. That is something that is so simple to do, but it is skipped 99% of the time.
It's a specialty thing of sorts.
So back damming is when you have a rough opening, usually what's going to happen is there's going to be a piece of inset wood on the inside of where that window frame is going to sit on the interior of the house.
Right.
What that's for, and you would usually have a flashing lapped over that as well, waterproofing. What would happen is, again, this is kind of that third layer of defense that we were talking about. It gets behind the cladding, it gets through the window flashing, down
or
into the window.
The actual weld in the corners of the vinyl isn't good in shipping, something no one saw, and that window is always going to leak in the corner right from the very beginning.
And you never see it.
And you never see it, and you've done all the beautiful things, and you've done everything you can do. It makes no difference. That is going to leak in that corner.
Yep.
It's unfortunate. And so a back dam won't let that water come back into the house.
Yes, that's right. It keeps it in that rough opening, and it's just a raised
and since you don't tape the bottom, it's got a way out.
It's got a way out. That's very important to not tape the bottom. We didn't really go over that. But 2 reasons. One, a lot of the weep holes of windows
are at the bottom.
So when you tape them, when it rains, you're automatically sending that back into the house.
Game over.
And 2, if it does get behind the window, it's not about keeping water out. It's about letting water out, and you have to have a path to let water out.
Absolutely. As far as installation, the only thing we didn't touch on with Pella that I finally
let me finish up on this back dam.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
A little tidbit you wouldn't think about. So you have your rough opening, and your window usually comes a half inch smaller all the way around, and you center it and you fit it in there, and you put this piece of half-inch back dam. Good idea. We all think it's a great idea. And then you go to case that window from the inside. Now your reveals are off. If you know what I'm saying? Because now you're putting that bottom piece of trim, that sill, a 1/2 inch higher. So the vinyl exposed that you're going to see between the wood and the vinyl is different than the sides and the top. So you can either make your RO 1/2 inch higher, or you can fur in the other 3 sides. And then you're going to be taking up almost too much of the vinyl, and the reveal will look weird. So, run that through your head as you're a finish carpenter now.
Yeah.
Put that hat on and look at that opening. You're going to go reveal. I'm a picky guy on reveals, just as you are. I want the reveal to be perfect, as close as you can get when they build that box. And it's not, you're going to miss it by 1/2 inch on the bottom and not the toe sides and the top.
Oh, yeah.
So just if you're doing back dams, go that extra 1/2 mile.
I've also seen where they will reverse a shim and use a shim as a back dam.
Yep.
And then they turn the other shim around the other way. So the window's got a level spot to fit on, but it's actually creating the back dam for that. And that would help also solve, because you would set your sill flush with that shim, which is going to be level with everywhere else around that.
And I've also seen like a little bead of caulk, or you and I are Lexel guys, so
yeah, that's why another reason we use that Lexel. It does form a back dam at that point. You're still in that window to the outside.
Enough about back dams.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things that I finally got a clue on, and now we've seen it at IBS and we've seen it at Build Show Live, is Pella's Ready Set.
Yeah.
And
Steady Set.
Yeah, Steady Set. And I finally got to see some in a house. Oh my God, you can teach a 12-year-old how to put a window in, and it's perfect all the way around. You don't have to worry about trying to, I got to shim this side up, and I've got to make sure it takes out all of the guesswork, and it installs screws in from the inside.
Safe install.
It's a safety install on a second floor. Are you kidding me?
Well, one other super cool factor about it is the window flange is not what you're installing it for anymore. And it's got a cover. So you insert the window into the opening, and then you go outside and you pull the window flange covers off, and they come out. It's one piece. There's no seams.
They're folded in,
and you're not penetrating them.
Right.
So now you have a really good flashing area surface for the outside to seal.
No screws needed.
No screws.
And that's the only reason you have to go on the outside of the window is to flash it.
That's it.
And that's it.
But you're not holding the window up.
Nope. Not holding a window.
It's a super cool.
And really, depending on what you're doing for siding, this and that, your guy can do it later.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's in the panic that the windows now needs to be, while you're there and you're putting a flange window and you have to do all the tape thing. Hey, the flange is there when you're up there on the scaffolding and you're moving up on whatever. Here, tape the window while you're there.
And because they install from the inside, there's clips to keep you from pushing it to the outside so it can't fall out. And then there's I
can't remember.
Really kind of another clip, a spring
at the top
that keeps the window, once it's in the hole, it catches on the framing and it won't allow the window to fall back in. So once it's in the hole, it's not falling out. It's a really safe window to install. It's a really smart concept that Bella's come up with.
So
and they do
flange on the inside.
No, so there's a L-shaped bracket that screws on.
There's a metal bracket.
Okay.
The frame of the window, and then when you push it into the rough opening, that L shape meets the framing, and the other side of the L is on the window, and then you would screw that to the rough opening, and that's how that window is being held in place. Gotcha. So technically, it's probably even a more secure window because it's not a plastic or thin nailing fit on the outside. Right. It's a metal bracket screwed directly to the window that's holding it.
And they own the patent.
Yeah, they do.
The fin is in the same place.
Yeah.
The fin is now just a flashing.
It's just
it's not a hold me up.
Yep. I got to install one at Pella's factory, which was when they right before they released it to the public, and it's as easy as it sounds. You can watch somebody do it, and the next guy can go do the next 10 perfectly. But I think we're kind of wrapped up on windows.
I think we've covered windows.
Doors, we don't have much to cover on doors. Everybody knows how a door works. There's a few codes that are required. Garage entry doors have to be on a spring hinge and weather sealed. And
and I'll tell you, the door between the garage and a conditioned space.
That's what I'm talking about.
That has, if you better look, because I think in the 21 code, they took them out. Now the 24 code, they put them back in.
As far as being weather stripped?
No, being the hinged, the
spring hinge?
Yeah, the spring hinge.
So you're talking about fire rating stuff.
Fire rating,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but that's part of doors,
Yeah.
and it's supposed to be at least a minimum of a
It's
30-minute door.
They are fire rated. The spring hinge, the reason people don't like it is because
They're carrying groceries.
Carrying groceries.
you bring your groceries into the garage, and every time you've got to try to open that door up with a hand.
But it makes all the sense in the world.
It does.
What's the point of a firewall if you have a big hole in it, it doesn't automatically close and make the firewall continuous?
Yeah,
So
fire rated assembly.
I've been totally a fan of it, and I've had it hit me in the nose and the face and the butt carrying stuff. But I'm like, well, at least I know the car starts on fire, which I've had fire restoration experience, and at least I know that it's the same code while we're doing the ceilings in 5/8 in case the car starts on fire. So why would you take your time and effort to do the ceiling if there's a living space above and have a door that stays open?
Right. No,
Yeah.
I'm not arguing with you on it. I'm just saying
I'm a fan.
that some of that stuff comes in and out just based from one thing. It's kind of like the receptacle on an island. I don't want to get into that, but it's the same deal. But I'm still a fan of the boomerang hinges being on those doors, and I want them to close. I just do. I think it's smart, and but they're saying you got to have at least a minimum 30-inch wide door on the front of a house, and I mean, yeah, there's codes for the size of door, height of a ceiling, and which is the height of a door. So I would say those are things that I think we take for granted that we probably shouldn't. We need to pay attention to.
So you're talking about man doors.
Yeah.
So you can actually blend doors and windows together. For instance, Pella, I just did 2 of their 12-foot quad sliders. They're a door, but they're a window.
Right. And they have walk-through windows. They're actually a window, but it's a door.
It's a door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a fine line. Would you go to a window manufacturer for a door? Yeah, for sure you would.
Maybe even preferably the same.
I was going to say preferably, yeah.
Oh, for sure. So there's that.
It's not the case for interior doors, though.
No.
So interior doors, but exterior doors, a lot of window manufacturers also make exterior doors.
And it's good to kind of stay all in the same family on those. And unless you want to get into the really cool panoramic stuff, those folks don't necessarily make windows, the really high-end panoramics. You can get a window manufacturer to give you a panoramic, but it might not be what you're looking for as far as the high-end panoramic. So there's a little difference in doors that are not a man door.
Right.
They're a window door.
They're a window door.
So there's that. There's metal doors.
Yeah.
We've been seeing a lot of metal doors. I've done a few metal doors. That's a whole interesting concept of itself. They don't really test those. There's no sticker on them.
Not unless they're fire rated. If they're 1 hour fire rated, they've got a sticker on them.
Well, no, these are entry doors.
Right,
These
I get it.
Doors, and they're coming from out of the country.
Oh, you're talking about the ornamental metal doors. Yeah,
I'm talking about front doors.
The front doors.
Yeah, so there's when you normally see a sticker on a true value or some sort of, I don't want to say true value because that's not a name, but that's probably a name I should use. So I shouldn't use names. But you're not going to get a sticker on those doors.
No.
And then you hope they put foam inside, and maybe they did.
Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't.
Yeah. So there's those types of doors that are out there, and they're fairly popular.
Yeah.
Interesting enough.
So I've seen some of those that have like a pivot hinge. It's about 6 inches in.
Sure.
I feel like that would be a nightmare to keep sealed. If you guys run into that.
Interesting enough, and the seal isn't as bad as you think. But what is a nightmare is that seal sweeps on the threshold and takes the paint off. So it looks bad. They're really cool. I don't know if they're cool for the factor that it doesn't really make the door open anymore.
Part of it is when they put that pivot hinge, then you can get into really large scale doors.
Sure.
I'm talking like 10-foot tall, 7-foot wide doors
Yeah.
because that style hinge can support it.
500-pound pivot.
Mhm.
Yeah, that one I did is that big easy.
Mhm.
So
I don't typically see those. Not I do once in a while, but not typically.
yeah, I mean, I think they're more of a I don't know, a cool gimmick.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, I got pivot door.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Oh, nice. You know, what's that?
buddy.
Yeah, you know,
That's it.
you can't screen them.
That's true.
Yeah.
You know,
Storm door.
you know, like if it's a front door and you want to do a safety door or some sort of screen, forget it. You know, so, but I don't know. I don't have anything bad to say about them. I know
It's just another product.
yeah. There's a reason for it. They're cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you see some of these ones on these crazy real estate shows out of LA or something, and they're bigger than the whole house.
You drive a car through it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's pivoting on one pivot.
Mhm.
You know, so I mean, they're cool. Any other fun facts?
Mm,
I mean, we don't need to care about hardware. We don't care about any of that kind of stuff.
I want to get into Pella doesn't sell garage doors, so maybe not.
They used to, I believe.
Really?
Yeah, but they don't.
What, I mean, overhead doors? Or,
Mhm.
well, if that's not a leak in a hole in the wall, I don't know what is.
Mhm.
We don't even want to talk about that. That's interesting. I guess we could talk briefly about that. I've had a lot of people spec out that really cool look like you see at the coffee shop where the overhead glass doors are there, you know,
Mhm.
and that's a really good look. And it's kind of fun. Let's say if you had an outdoor patio
Sure.
that you're out of the building envelope and you're out there and you want to do this thing, I'm all about it. But to put one of those in the actual building envelope and expect it not to leak like a sieve,
it's gonna happen.
it's going to happen. So keep that in mind.
Yeah,
You know,
and I've talked to a couple of the garage door guys just because I wanted to know if they made the track or not.
didn't you have one drawn up in your place at one point?
Yeah,
I'm thinking you did.
Yeah.
The sealed doors.
yeah, the sealed that track that has the little bump in it,
Mhm.
so that when the door
It
comes
pushes-
down,
it
it
pushes
pushes
it,
it up
right?
against the.
Absolutely.
Now, I think that makes a lot of sense,
Mhm.
but that's not something we typically see.
Yeah.
Oh,
we
don't
see
them-
just a regular track.
Oh,
and
for
we,
sure.
You know, we
Mhm.
put this wide of vinyl around it, and hey, we've got a sealed door.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, they're not sealed. They're
No,
the
not
worst.
even close.
Talking
but-
about slamming the garage man door.
Yeah. Wham.
Well-
I do. I mean, as far as garage doors and things, we did see some things at the Parade Homes that was pretty nice as far as real quiet motors and
Mhm.
Oh, the variable speed motors are just as trick as it gets now.
oh yeah,
Those are
they're
very cool.
yeah, they're not
No chain
clanking
drive.
around.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yep.
But that's not exactly what we're talking about today. Or
Joel's-
we're filling holes.
but we're filling holes.
Joel's
you know?
Parade of Home garage door opener had cameras on it.
Yeah, there you go.
So you could look and see if the car was in the garage.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
If I'm looking to see if my car's in the garage, hopefully I know
Yeah.
because I was the one driving.
Because you're the one driving it. Yeah. I guess if you had a 16-year-old,
Yeah.
you might want to see what time they came in.
Yeah.
I think in this area, what I've only done a couple times, but I think is a very good idea is a door closer
Mhm.
on these exterior doors. The wind here is just crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And you're ripping hinges, you know.
Yep.
And so a nice door closer,
Mhm.
I got commercial, pretty simple door closer is almost something that we would all want to consider,
Mhm.
you know, no matter where you are, you know.
I've replaced the little pneumatics on my storm door like probably 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But these are like a commercial hydraulic door closer, like you see at the grocery store, whatever, you know. That's something we can do a little more in the residential world and help out.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know that they're that much money and that they really make a big difference on 1 or 2 doors in a home.
Mhm.
Big deal.
Yeah, it would make you take a little step above the group, and your customer would really appreciate that.
Mhm. Well, I think that's all we got for
That's
Fenestrations.
all I can think of.
One more thing
Fenestrations
on the man doors.
yeah.
There's in swing and out swing.
Oh, yeah.
That's a little bit of a talk and why and the pitfalls of one versus the other.
Here, I don't think we're required to have in or out. We can have either. I know on coastal, they have to be outside
I was
swing
going to say they
doors
swing out on a coastal.
because of the pressure. They want that frame there holding that door and not be able to blow in. So, therefore, the roof doesn't blow
Yeah.
off, but it is a requirement there.
Yeah. I don't see very many
Outswing.
front door out swings. Not
No, it's not necessarily the front door, but just other man doors.
Yeah.
You know, I've had them called out on out swings and scratch my head and thinking, well, why would I want to outswing?
And you can't outswing over a set of stairs.
Well,
Sorry.
Can't do that.
Nope.
But one advantage to an outswing is it's harder for someone to break into your house.
True. Because they can't kick it in.
They can't ram it in. They can't kick it in. So that's I've had people request that from me on a security note. I want an outswing door because I don't think anybody's going to get in very fast. I'm like, you're right. I couldn't get into it. You know, when you do an outswing door, the sill is no longer outside; it's inside your building, and it makes your floor look weird. Your transition isn't.
I was going to say the transition is kind of strange.
Kind of strange. So keep that in mind. What you're doing on your flooring, and if you're doing an outswing door where you got floor transitions, you're not so much in the garage, but
so then you can't do a storm door or screen or anything on it.
Sure. I mean, I get
a little tougher.
Yeah. So I've had to use them because of just clearances. In-swing doors are going to hit the fender of the car.
Right.
You know, on a garage man door, they want to be able to get in and out of the corner of the garage. Well, someone's going to go wham and it's going to hit the fender. So I guess we have to do outswing. So that's an interesting option. I don't know where that came from, but I've done them over the years. Outswing doors.
I see them occasionally, but not very often.
No, but there's a need for them.
Yeah.
Well, does that fill all the holes with the Fenestration podcast?
Well, we did the delivery vault. That was a hole. You know, so we did a delivery vault. So if you have a UPS guy coming or whatever it is, there's a big delivery vault door and keypad, and then opened up, and then they deliver their package or their pizza and close it off. And that was penetration that didn't have fins of any sort. It was a really cool piece that was maybe designed to sit on a stick out by the yard. And so it was a retrofit into the building. I'm just thinking in my head, what other holes that we filled?
Yeah, I can't. Yeah. Patio, I mean, still patio doors. We see those, and there's different. Well, there's a lot of difference in patio doors from one manufacturer to another, too, and the quality, and just like windows. But as a whole, I mean, I can't think of anything else to cover. I mean,
well, let's wrap this one up. Let's call it an episode. Again, we want to thank our sponsors, Huber Engineered Woods and Pella Windows and Doors.
Thank you.
Yep.
You guys help make this possible, and we have a lot of fun.
They didn't give us enough money to buy you a shirt this week, did they?
Maybe next time, Joel.
Yeah, check your sponsorship. We should have had Pella shirts today. We probably we need to get some Huber shirts and some Pella shirts so we can provide support for our sponsors.
That's what we need.
Why don't you, Ben? Can you get on that?
Yeah, on it.
Okay, good.
Got it.
Covered.
Thank you very much. Y'all have a great day.
Thanks much.
We'll see you next time on the TPBA Builder Talk podcast.
All right. See you.